be a part of something and be a part of a process, because the greatest thing in the world about a process is that it's infinite. You're always on the path and journey of, I just want to get better. I just got better today. I don't really understand or maybe have the ability to quantify it for you in a metric or an emoji or a motivational Instagram quote, but I can tell you when I lay my head back down at night and say, I got better today.
There he is, Coach Robbie. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man. Good morning. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. It's what? June 20th?
I don't know. It's
for the listeners. I mean, it's June 19th for us, but this is our Thursday edition of the Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast. We come to you every Monday and usually Thursday, at least twice a week, pending holidays, and have so for what is now 278 episodes.
Yeah. Yep, you're on it. 278.
Yeah, 278 today. So, and 278 will be, sadly, but not sadly, our last podcast with you in Nashville and me in Chattanooga.
What?
Or, no, with us both.
I was waiting for some big dramatic thing, and I was like, wait, that didn't even sound right.
I hung on to that dead silence for way too long, trying to pause for dramatic effect, and then I totally screwed up the re-entry. But yeah, this will be our last podcast. We're both in Nashville. I'm headed out after we have Tri Camp, one of our triathlon camps, starting on a Thursday, which is for most people today, if you're listening. And then the movers come as well. My wife will be orchestrating that move, and then my sister-in-law comes up to Chattanooga on Friday to help Allie get the house all situated and decorated, and then I'll arrive Sunday late afternoon, early evening after camp is finished, and I'll come back to the house, grab the rest of our stuff, grab the dog, and head to Chattanooga.
So the house is going to be all ready when you get there?
I don't know about already. I don't want to put that kind of pressure on my wife, who does a tremendous job in all things. But most people would say, oh, you're so lucky, like that's so nice. If you don't have to worry about any of the moving. Well, most of our stuff's in storage right now. But this is a very well. Take notes, people. And if your wife is listening with you, you might want to listen to this episode on another day. But this is a wonderful lesson in the execution of proposal. She proposed this to me a couple weeks ago when we were trying to figure out the best day for the movers to come, and I was like, babe, like this, I don't know. I was like, I don't want you to do the move alone. It's just a lot to handle. Her dad, my father-in-law, is picking up Hayden from daycare today, so he's going to have him for the next 4 days. And I was like, I don't want you to have to go through that. She's like, it just makes the most sense for you to do camp, and you're going to be busy anyway. So it's not like if we did it in one weekend, you wouldn't be right back in Nashville, and just be a great use of our time. As long as Jay can do it, it'd be the best thing to do. I'm thinking, oh, okay. I mean, if you say so, very kind, very generous. And then I'm thinking, I see exactly what you're doing right now.
Oh, wait, there's motive?
What do you mean? Is there? I mean, I'm saying, married before, but you've been in a relationship. Everybody's got a motive, and the motive is she can just do whatever the heck she wants to for 48 hours and put the house exactly how she wants to, without question, without interruption, without my usually just absolutely ridiculous suggestions of do this and do that, maybe it should go here. She can just do it without the interference of said husband. And also she will, for the most part, be unchaperoned in any and all visits to Lowe's and Target. And so while I may come back to a mostly finished and decorated and moved in house, we're going to be broke. So
you're going to be broke, and your childhood trophies are going to end up mysteriously missing.
Exactly, they're going to end up in the trash. She gets on to me already because I don't keep anything. Like, I keep nothing. I don't. If I didn't know I had it, it's gone. She keeps everything. She has like the lunchbox from 3rd grade. It's just she just keeps stuff. So she'll be able to do what she wants to without me being in the way. So it's really kind of works out for best of us. But yeah, she knows what she's doing. And then
I was going to say, it's just a new beginning for you.
It is, man.
Where do you want to be in 5 years?
I'm super excited about this. This is really a dream move for us. To move to Chattanooga, a city that we really, really love and have gotten to love even more over the last few months, traveling back and forth to visit the house. And, we're already there twice a year for races, and it's just a great city. It's from everything that we've seen and people we've talked to and met, it's a great place to raise a family. There's plenty of opportunities to do things outdoors. We'll be fairly close to downtown. Like, I think we're 10 minutes, in triathlon speak, we're 10 minutes from transition. So that kind of gives you an idea of how close we are to downtown. Our new subdivision backs up to a run trail. But anyway, yeah, we're very, very excited, and it is definitely, if you could have asked me where I would have ended up or what our life would have been like, 5 years ago, because 5 years ago I was, let's see, this is June, so 5 years I was like 4 months sober, just out of treatment with, I think I was waiting tables, and I had to borrow money from my mom and dad to buy a car because I didn't have any money, and was living in a halfway house, and it was, yeah. If you had told me then that, I'd be doing what I'm doing now and we would have this life, then I'd been like, you're nuts. But, they say, things come true if you work specific things. And yeah, so we're very, very excited and looking forward to doing it. And I was thinking earlier, back to just the tradition of the podcast of us starting at 9:00. Is this really is like the best case scenario for you and I, because I get to get up and get a bunch of things done and get some work out of the way, probably get a workout in, and it'll be 10:00 my time, and then be 9:00 for you, and it kind of works out best for both of our schedules.
Oh, so you want to keep it on schedule?
I think I'm okay with that. I think it'll give me a nice chance to get some things done and get out of the way, and because with daycare and stuff, it kind of we don't usually just have in-work meetings and stuff online for you guys to listen to, but you can listen today. But I think it'll work out well, because usually daycare kind of leaves me in limbo. We do the daycare drop off, and it leaves me like an hour before the cast starts, and I can't really get into much work groove. So I think it might work out well.
Oh, you can get a power hour workout in.
Yeah, exactly. That's the game plan. But yeah, we're excited. The podcast will continue on into the 3s and 4s and 500s and so on as we hope. But yeah, we appreciate you tuning in today, for listening. If it's your first time, go back in the archives, dig deep. As we said, we got 278 episodes covering all things triathlon, from training and specific swim, bike, and run podcasts. We have a few interviews with race directors and that are really, really good listens. And then for the most part, we just really like to cover our backgrounds and our experiences and the things we've gone through, and hopefully prevent you from going through some of the same headaches and sometimes heartaches that you and I have gone through, and really share that in an honest and sometimes brutally honest approach. But hey, the point is to hopefully set you guys up for success as best as we can in all things triathlon and training and in life. And I gotta say, man, I know you got the same email that I got late yesterday or last night, and Mike and I do this, and I've done this for going on 3 years in October, and we do it for free. We don't charge the podcast, we don't have commercials and sponsors, and we get paid 10 times, if not more, in the emails that we receive from listeners, or even just some podcast reviews of people that we've been able to connect with, or in some way the words and stories that we've shared for both you and I, Mike, for certain people. It does more for us, I think, than it does for the people that listen, and I think you would second that. But it's that's how we get paid. We get paid in relationships and connections, and getting to meet awesome people and hearing great stories from good things that have come from hopefully you listening and applying some of these lessons from the podcast. And the best compliment that we can ever get is that and we've gotten a few lately, and it's kind of humbling, is people have said that we've not only helped them become better triathletes but better people. And that is the number one goal. I think if we had to give like a one-liner for our podcast, that would be our number one goal, is to have that kind of an influence on anyone that we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we do talk obviously about tons of stuff that's directly related to triathlon, but at the core of what we're doing and why we even started this, I think it even goes deeper. I think it goes at the core of why we even started having good conversations together is I think we were searching for some stuff, and we've always had that connection, and that continues as we still search for, better ways to live and better ways to be happier and be better people. And, like last week we sat down and had about a 3-hour brunch
at least
discussion.
Yeah, we had a 20-minute brunch and a 4-hour coffee. That's kind of how it ended up.
The whole wait staff was kind of looking at us over the flowers. Like, are they gone yet? Are they leaving?
Leaving? Hello.
But a lot of it had to do with where we want to be, not only with the podcast and the business and everything like that, but as people 5 years from now. And it's sort of like twisted us back into our business and how we're going about things and how we think about what we're doing, and it all comes back to our personal lives and our personal aims and what we want to get out of what we're doing, and how do we want the business to sort of help that flower into the future. And it all comes back to people that email us, that say that something resonated with them in one or more of the podcasts, and it eventually helped them sort of change the way they approach life, or the triathlon for sure, and then maybe life in the subsequence of that. So that's important to us, and that's what I think we were thinking about talking about today, right? It's sort of like,
yeah, absolutely.
And we're asking you, not just us, but like, where do you want to be a year from now and 5 years from now in this sport, in this life, and how can triathlon play a part in that?
And I think it's also important to say before we kind of get into that in terms of life and triathlon is if and I don't even think we've shared there, so we could probably even pinpoint it with the memories that we both have now with my senioring age, but is like when we started to do this podcast, 2.5 something years ago, I was living in Kansas City. We had just had Hayden. He was only a few weeks old. Mike was living in Nashville. I didn't even know if and when I was ever going to move back to Nashville. At that point, I was loving what I was doing in Kansas City. Was loving my job. And when Mike and I used to get together before we moved, we would pretty much do exactly what we're doing right now. And that is we'd get together for coffee, and we would talk for triathlon for about, 10 minutes, and then something that was some kind of philosophy or subject or topic within what we were talking about within training or in racing would ultimately just kind of blossom into a different conversation about what each of us were kind of going through in life, and like what we thought about things. And I think that's generally pretty normal with friends that have shared interests and hobbies and I think that's why it's so great and such a great conversational starter, if you want it to be, is that I think as we get older and as society changes and things become so media and device driven, it's going to become harder and harder and harder for people to have in-person, straight in front conversations. And I think it's hard for people to do that. They feel awkward, they don't know where to start, and they don't know if somebody else cares. And I think that's one of the important things about having a shared hobby or a shared interest, is that you can start that conversation to where it's basically surface level. We can talk about training or the bike ride we did or the race coming up, and all that stuff is surface. It's all material stuff. It's stuff that if it really was taken out of your life, you might miss it for a minute, but it's not going to change the fabric of who you are. But when you allow yourself to start engaging in a conversation in a topic to where, like you said, you're both engaged, then I think you can tell that you both are ready to kind of talk about whatever. And you and I would just go down endless rabbit holes of things that had nothing to do with, triathlon. And we sit there for hours and talk. And I got to hear some of Mike's very first theories that probably should put a book out. And that's why we started the podcast. Was we knew there was a need, I think, to connect, because surely you and I weren't the only two people in the world that lived apart that still wanted to talk. And we could be weird and talk on the phone for an hour and a half, or we could be even weirder and pick up two headsets on Amazon and then talk out loud and let random people listen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the point being is that it was about just doing what we felt was right and what we were kind of pulled to do that was good. And then obviously we had no earthly idea, kind of going back to the beginning of the podcast about, I had no idea my life is going to be like this, but I also just knew that if I just did all the right things that I really loved, and I kept that as nobody's perfect, and I always make mistakes. I still make mistakes, but if I knew, like especially when I got out of treatment and got sober, was if I just do all these simple things every single day, that things are going to end up great. And I don't know what's going to look like, and I think that's also the fun part. But you have to have an idea of how you want to live your life and project it for it to even happen. You can't run off in a different direction and expect life to twist you around. I mean, it may happen, it could happen, but you can't expect it. And while you and I couldn't have expected our Amazon headset purchases to end up connecting us with hundreds and hundreds of people, in being such a blessing to both of us, but we started it with something that was good, and it wasn't to make money. It wasn't to give the 10 best triathlon hacks, or it wasn't to get sponsorships. It was just to connect. And I think, as we kind of talk about, you and I talked about the other day, your personal aim is this book that we both read called The E-Myth. And it said, before you start anything basic in terms of how you, because most people say, how do you want your business to be in 5 years? Everybody talks about money. And one of the things I loved about this book was it was about, where do you want to see your life? Not your business life, but your life. What are the things that you value the most? And we were talking yesterday, and I think it's a great topic in general, because as so many people, if you're listening to this podcast, triathlon is a huge part of your life. You've made it a huge part of your life, and through this podcast, we hope that it continues to be a huge part of your life, as long as it's in a healthy, productive, and positive way. And so I think it's a great exercise and topic to look at how you want your life to be in 5 years, how you want to look. But then also, I think it's even more important for the sake of just talking about triathlon and training, is where do you want to be as an athlete in 5 years? Because we talk about this frequently too, is that so many athletes get wrapped up on, how can I get from point A to point B the quickest, or just get there? And they don't think about the direction or how they navigate that journey from point A to point B, and how it might ultimately affect or deter or prolong their journey from getting from point A to point Z. And because it's hard, it's like, do you want to take an online course that takes a couple hours a week, or do you want to enlist in a master's or PhD program that takes 4 or 6 years? But the differences are huge. But it's that long-term approach and understanding what's best for me right now might not be what I want right now, in terms of how I'm gonna look in the future. And so I think it's a great topic for as people, and then as people that get to play triathlon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is a great topic. I've talked to us in some of these conversations we've had off headset, I guess. I always talk about what's important to us, and we kind of had that conversation, and we'll have it often, but we had it the other day pretty intensely. And, it got down to the nitty gritty about what did we want our lives to look like in 5 years. And I got to say, man, we didn't really talk about it the other day, but like Sunday was Father's Day. And that's a really tough day for me, man, in a lot of ways, because, and I know I'm going off a rabbit hole a little here, but I wanted to bring it up the other day. I just didn't get to it. But, I'm not a father. And, you see a lot of posts about how happy everything is. And, it's one of those days, everybody has one where, a lot of, like if you lost just a family member, a mother or something like that on Mother's Day, it's always tough. And for me, I kind of try to, I try to put up a wall or be tough or something like that. But the reality is I've, I have never been married, and I don't have any children, and I'm not a father. And that's always a tough day for me because it isn't just because I've really never had this deep yearning to have children or a kid, but it's more of a relationship thing for me. So like when we were talking, that was one of my things is like, man, I just, and we've been this podcast has done so amazing for us as far as meeting new awesome people and building relationships in general. But that's one thing that's been missing from my life, for quite a while. I've been in and out of relationships, and frankly, I've just been a shitty relationship person. But that's one of those things that I've really stepped back, and in fact, the whole podcast period has been one of those step backs. And you talk about, it'd be easy for me, I guess, or to go out and just start dating for the hell of it, or the first person, or it's sort of that what you just said about what you can do now isn't necessarily the best thing for you in 5 years. So I've been kind of stepping back and just working on myself, and that's part of what this podcast has been too for me, is just this be a more solid, consistent person. And, the day I started this journey before the podcast, like the first day I thought of, I wanted to go to Kona, and it's kind of taken me to this point, which is about 7 years into my journey, to actually sort of maybe even be in the cusp of that, so I guess I wanted to just sort of lay that out there. And
I think days like that I think they're hard, but they're good. I mean, I think good in a way that it not good that people go through like pain and agony. I mean, me, like Father's Day is a great day for me to be a father, and I enjoy it. But I also have zero relationship with my dad, and I mean, he lives 20 minutes away from me, and so it's a you kind of think about that too. Like it's not great, but it's good. And so you think about those things, but I think like in the great things in life and the bad things in life, they all impact and they all kind of demand a reaction of continued, growth or complacency or acceptance. And I think that, something that you said was, is that you or would love to have a relationship. And that's so much what this podcast is that those are the things that you should. Time and connecting with people are the things that have the most that you can't put a price on. You can't. You can't put and that's something that I think so much times in triathlon in general, how we become so self-centered and we become so isolated and lonely, and then because the least fun thing ever is to do everything alone all the time, and then you just look at yourself in the mirror 24/7, judging yourself and your stats and your times and your training, and then that's it. You live in a very small world of criticism and self-doubt and ego, and it's not healthy. And it's so funny you brought that kind of relationship part up, because as a guy that used to be, who was when I used to drink, I was, besides like an occasional going out, I was a very much an isolated drinker. I mean, I had very few friends. I would go home and I would drink, and I just didn't want to be around anybody. And so now to have as many friends as I do, and genuine relationships and friendships and stuff. And I was thinking about, like, we have our camp dinner, our opening night camp dinner is tonight, which is Wednesday. And I was thinking about all the people that are coming to this camp that I just can't wait to give like a huge hug. Like genuine like friendships and connections to people that you're like, gosh, like how lucky we are to be in our positions, and how lucky anybody is to have those relationships and friendships with people, and how valuable those are.
Yeah.
And even though we only see them for 3-4 times a year, it's 10 times better than having that worthless friend that you don't even know how you became friends on Facebook with, but somehow you're in the same circle and you're friends, and they send you a message. Like, that doesn't really mean much.
Yeah, that's funny, dude. That was your drinking thing. My drinking thing was always I would drink with people. Like I would want to go out. That was like the thing. That was sort of the crutch that gave me the ability to go sort of be with people. I was a little bit more, had isolation tendencies when I wasn't in the party. And But yeah, so even last night, we had a couple athletes in town last night. I went out to dinner for them. And I was really looking forward. It was so awesome just to have, we have a lot of things in common. We just had some really good conversation outside of triathlon as we just sat there and had pizza, which we'll have again tonight. But yeah, it really is. It's amazing, and it takes time. Like the first camps were a little bit awkward for me, and seeing people and believing that everybody was really here to do stuff like that and sober. It's kind of like, what the hell?
It's like, what are these people
are
doing?
really?
It's
you sure they don't want to be, quit working out and go hit some beers?
But it is. It's the relationship part is weird, but I also think like one of the things that kind of like we can push us through into how it can be used in terms of the podcast is where you want yourself and what you want to get out of this sport to look like in 5 years. And again, it's when everything that we do is so centered around like what you're doing this year, what race are you doing this year? And you have athletes who get stuck in that vicious cycle of Ironman after Ironman after Ironman, and then they wonder why they aren't getting a ton faster. When they take a lot of time off and they're just continuing on kind of that same path and that same pattern. And whether you're training alone or but it's like we triathletes traditionally only think and can only function in a race season life cycle. But I gotta do it this year. Like they're gonna, like every year, every triathlete acts like they're gonna retire at the end of every year. They have to.
That's true.
They have to smash as many races as they possibly can into 1 year and I get like you never know when you're going to be able to quit doing it again. But listen, I mean, the chances are that if you take care of yourself, when you treat your body the way you should, and you connect with people, you don't get burnt out through isolation and overtraining and not reaching any kind of benchmarks, that you're going to be able to do this for a long time if you want to. And so in order to reach that potential, that ultimate potential because listen, most athletes want to say every year they're trying to get to Kona. Mm-hmm. Or they want to get to Kona. They want to qualify for this, but they're not willing to take the time to do it. And for most athletes, it's not take the time as in volume or time like within the training week. It's they don't want to change up a training cycle to, I know for me, in order to reach this and what's going to be required and demanded of me on that day, I need to get faster before I get so concerned with going farther. Did I lose you? Or was that just so poetic that it left you silent?
Man, I was on the edge of my seat waiting for more.
No, but it's a constant like triathlon training paralysis that we put ourselves in, where we only think about the year and we don't think, maybe, and we talked about this, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 podcasts ago about, why you shouldn't be racing an Ironman this year, or why you shouldn't be signing up for another one, and why your continued obsession with racing 2, 3, or 4 long distance events a year isn't making you a better Ironman athlete. It's just continuously putting you in the same training cycle all the time. Mm-hmm. And your body adapts to that. Your body gets used to it, just like a diet, or it's just like when your body's like, hey, I get it. And this is only so much I can handle. And the intensity distribution never changes, and your body can't handle it. And there's so much recovery that has to go into every single time you do one of these. And so if you're really looking at it and you have to take an objective look and step back, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be done right now. And like I know for me personally, like there are still a ton of things I want to achieve as an athlete. There are still things that are on my list that I want to complete, that I want to do, that bug me that I haven't accomplished yet. And in the last 3 to 4 months, I have put training just on the furthest back burner possible. I've trained the least amount I've trained in probably 6 years. And it wasn't because I don't love triathlon. It's because my energy and my focus has been on our move and things around the house and my mom fell down the stairs and broke a rib, and we're staying with her until our house got finished, and just so many things, and then travel, and then just so much energy into coaching and doing things. And so I've just kind of recently kind of regrounded what I want to accomplish. And my first thought, and this is so different from the way I used to function, is the first thought was, all right, I'm gonna try and get to Kona this year.
Yep. It
was no screwing. I'm gonna get it all back right now. And my first thought was, all right, let me get out a sheet of paper and let me look objectively on if I really want to accomplish the things I want to accomplish. And first off, the thing I want to accomplish most is that I just want to reach my full potential. I don't think I've hit a ceiling. I don't think I'm done yet. I don't think I've ever performed yet to the best of my ability of where I am now. So I still think I can have that. I still think I can have it next year when I'm 40. And so when I got done, I started working through that, what that process might look like. I came to the conclusion that it's more than likely, if I'm consistent, if I'm healthy, if I stay engaged, if I continue and I commit to the process, that the chances are it's probably going to take me 14 to 18 months to get to the point to where that conversation I can have with myself and look at myself in the mirror and say, this is a legit conversation. This isn't me trying to amp myself up. This isn't me, doing the winter motivation. Because in the winter, when we're not racing, everyone's invincible.
Yep.
Everyone in the winter time is like, crushing it this year. 2019, I'm going to dominate. I'm crushing it. 2019 is, PR or ER. And then like the season gets around, they're like, well, like I have, it's been kind of busy.
Well,
And I'm like, it's like an excuse parade come summer. But in the winter time, we don't have to get to race. Everybody's going to crush it. Everybody's motivation out the window, and everybody's got a poetic, Tony Robbins meets Oprah, triathlon quote every other day on their Instagram. And then the summer hits, and they're like, I don't know, maybe this isn't my year. Maybe things aren't, going to happen. But I want to be able to realistically look myself in the mirror this time next year and think, you know what? I put myself in the position I wanted to, and I think I'd legitimately have a chance. And it was like, okay, that wasn't really a hard pill to swallow. It was just kind of the reality of the situation. But I also find a lot of solace in the not right now culture that I used to have, and that was also just a more of a manifestation of my addictive personality. Was that everything had to be right now, and that's all I could cling on to. Versus, I really do kind of as a person, I do love, like, and that's part of being a coach, is I do love like the process and the fabric of long-term success and what that looks like, and the piecing of the puzzles, and the slow arcing trajectory of positive performance. And I love that. And so when I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, I got to have this, let's work my way backwards. Kind of like we did at our meeting last week. It was, where do I want to be? And now it's work my way backwards. And then now I have to look like, what exactly is that going to look like realistically? And you have to be willing to kind of take a step back and like, all right, you need to do this, and this. And you also, which I think is a huge thing that athletes struggle with, is you have to be willing and ready to put yourselves in situations that are kind of benchmarks along the road to where you want to go that aren't going to be your quote unquote best. That you have to be okay racing or going out and just focusing on executing as part of the boxes you need to check to get to the end of that list. Instead of, I've got to just because you can't crush yourself in training for every race. You just can't. And then you have to take time to recover. So you have to also be willing to kind of swallow your pride and your ego a little bit and think, you know what, this is a step along the way. And in order for me to get to the final step, the precipice to where I want to be, this is a step I have to make. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to care about the optics. I don't need to care about my ego. I don't need to care about what other people think. I just need to know that my preparation to go through this race was to get to the next step. And so many athletes, again, treat races as expiration dates or retirement parties, like there's nothing ever going to be at the end of it, and put themselves in harm's way or totally sacrifice a phase and training block of development that could propel them forward for years just for the sake of the now. And it might feel good and be okay in the interim, but then when you look down and you've been run down and you can't get that much faster, and you wonder why you just can't. You're only taking off 5-10 minutes off your Ironman time, maybe, or you kind of hover around the same time zone for every race, and you wonder why that is. It's probably because things have just stayed the same, and nothing has really changed like it should change.
Man, we're in this. There's this concept of digital minimalism, where it's like we get exposed. There's always outliers, right? That do like 4 Kona or 4 Ironman races a year, and then you just see it now, right? Whereas before, these stories were kind of like more, obscure, and like it's like tornadoes now. It's or weather events. It's like every single weather event is on the news now. So, but before that stuff was happening, we just never saw it. And now it's like, well, things are changing, whatever. But the reality is, it's like we get in, and it's like with me, I do believe that our first thing the other day in that conversation was we were like, we want to be healthy and we want to become better and increase and maintain our fitness. And I believe that's possible. I do believe that age is just a number, and I feel like I haven't even reached my best, and I'm 55 years old, right? So what does that mean? But like the idea of...
You're how old?
56.
Okay, just checking.
I just go by age group, man.
I know, man. I'm just 55. 59.
I'm 55 until I get to the next age group, right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah, I hear you.
You know what I mean? No, it's at times I want to be sort of I think there's this tendency in all of us maybe to be a little bit of a motivator, right? And if I'm talking about something, and I know that it takes so much work behind the scenes, and like sometimes I just feel like I'm laying out bullshit if I'm talking about stuff because I don't really understand it. I just know that it's hard work, and I need to keep doing what I'm doing. And just because I have a good day or post something that like was spectacular, that doesn't mean that I have it. I understand everything. You know what I mean? So,
I mean, you said it perfectly, and it's such a great kind of topic. I think in general is that the 1%ers, the ones that write books and write blogs and create hacks and create 12 steps, because what might be easy for them, it's easy to sell because it comes across as easy and attainable and shortcut. Mm-hmm. And they make them and they market them and they produce them for the other 99% of us to consume that are chasing that 1% opportunity of it won't take me that long, or I can take these shortcuts, or I really can only run two days a week and get a ton faster, or I don't have to do this. I can only train 6 hours a week and really reach my potential. But the truth is that for 99% of us, that ain't reality. But it's really, really hard to market and promote and sell. Listen, man, stay healthy, stay happy, be really, really consistent, do what you're supposed to do, take days off when you need to, not because you want to all the time, and just continue to do your best. And years and years and years down the road, guess what? Things are going to end up working out the way that you want them to. No one wants to hear that story because they want it to happen overnight, and they want to force things. And the more oftentimes you force things, the more often you get lost or frustrated, or for most of it, it's just like a constant state of distraction, but you're right. When you and I talk, there's things that we still want to be healthy. We're both getting older. We're all getting older. We want to be healthy. We want to be happy. We want to continue to increase our fitness. We want some flexibility. We want to be able to continue to meet people and connect with people and have an impact on people. But when you look at your triathlon life and what your primary aim could be, is I think that is one of the most often lost parts about it in the sport in general, and why so many people call it's funny, like the similarities between triathlon and being in recovery is people say that working the steps and being an AA it's a selfish journey, it's a selfish program. And I think most people in AA would probably say it's a selfish program. You have to do everything for yourself. And I couldn't disagree more. Because for me, part of my recovery, and I 100% totally believe this, is that the athletes that I work with, the friendships that I have, the connections that I have had are part of my recovery. They're part of why I've been able to stay over 5 years sober.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
They are part. It's 100% part. It's been a gigantic piece. Like, I think I even listened to a podcast a few months ago where somebody said, like, being sober isn't about recovery, it's about connecting. And I think it was actually on a Ritual podcast, and they did they had rats, and I can't remember this guy's name, but they had rats, and they had an option between, and they did like the whole cocaine and who became addicted thing. And anyway, the long story short is the rats, when offered cocaine, chose to hang out and be around other rats over the cocaine. So it was an interesting study, and is it about connecting with other people in isolation, or what's your actual choice and what's going to give you the biggest quote unquote high?
Mm-hmm.
And I think triathlon itself also gets just labeled that it's such a selfish sport. It's always about you. There are so many parts. Every day you wake up, there are so many things that you do and decisions you make and things you say that are selfish. But that's also human nature to make you a bad person. But when it comes to triathlon, it becomes a training, and it comes to being part of a group or a team or a community. Like, what are you going to remember? What are you going to remember versus what are you going to forget? When you retire from triathlon, is it going to be about, are you going to be that person who doesn't really race anymore because they're too old and beat up and they got shriveled up skin that looks like a prune that's been sitting on the asphalt for 78 hours? Or are you going to, with only stories to tell about that time you went to Kona in 1991, but you don't have anybody else to talk to, so you talk to the guy 3 lanes over? Or are you going to be a person who's going to look back and be like, I'm still having a good time, and your contacts and your Facebook feed and whatever it is, and your heart is filled with all these memories of all these people that you've connected with, the friendships that you've made, the training that you've done. And I mean, I think for the majority of our athletes, like when they race every year, they do a lot of races, they compete, they do really well. They look back and like, what was your favorite part of the year? Camp,
mm-hmm.
camp. This race. Because it takes you out of yourself and our self-obsession and grading scale of what is success and what is failure, and puts us in. There's so much to be said in terms of longevity and performance too. Is when you make goals alone, when you train alone, when you isolate alone, when you race alone, you are your biggest enemy and you are your only supporter. And if you don't have people around you, whether it's a coach or a mentor or friends that you can connect with from anywhere and everywhere, whether it's locally or online or all the time, or people you can see and talk with, that like that's what people want, and that's what keeps people going, and that's what fills your cup. You don't want to be responsible solely without any connection or any friendship or any training. I promise you. Because if you are in that spot, I can promise you and I can tell you this from 100% personal experience, if you were going to put yourself in a situation where you can be the only person that fills your cup, then it's going to run dry.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to run dry, and you're not going to know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then even worse, what might happen is you might start looking for things to fill it up with that aren't things you would normally do and that might be out of character. And I can't encourage enough athletes who train alone or do things alone, or like be a part of something and be a part of a process, because the greatest thing in the world about a process is that it's infinite. It doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't have a retirement date. You're always on the path and journey of, I just want to get better. And that self-fulfilling the gratification of, I just got better today. I don't really understand or have the ability to quantify it for you in a metric or an emoji or a motivational Instagram quote, but I can tell you when I lay my head back down at night and say, I got better today. That feeling and the repetition of that feeling and the consistency of that feeling and doing it over and over and over again, the fact that it is infinite is the most freeing thing in the world. because you don't have a deadline. You don't have a day of the race season where you have to put it all together or it's going to be a failure. My season is going to be a failure. Because what happens is you make the worst decisions ever when you have that fear of failure. And when that deadline is approaching, you make awful decisions. You do things you wouldn't normally do. But when your vision and your process oriented and the thing that you want is infinite and will one day hopefully be inevitable, you just don't know when, the ability and the freedom you have to work that, for recovery, it's work those steps, but triathlons work that process and that training is the pressure is gone, hopefully, and you're able to just produce and get better and enjoy.
You always hear about how, if you sign up for an Ironman, how it overtakes your brain. And I know that feeling so well. In fact, as you were talking about that, because I have a tendency to be an isolator in workouts. Nothing. I just do it. It's almost like in a way, triathlon gives you an excuse to isolate. If it's a productive way of isolation, and you kind of have this thing in your head every day, and it sort of pops in. You're doing your Ironman at the end of the year, and like daily. That sort of like wreaks havoc on your anxiety and things like that. Just because it'll, this workout today wasn't. What if what if I fail at that race? And that becomes such a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it puts a lot of pressure on you. And I think that obviously, we're tremendously resilient as humans, and we can pull that off for so long. But eventually, it's just one of those things where, like, I'm sure we've all had these moments in our apartments or houses or whatever the case may be, and you just kind of fall to your knees and say, I can't do this anymore, man. I just don't have the energy for it anymore. And I think that's what happens. And that whole idea about process that you were just talking about is amazing, because if it's just like, go in the right direction and doing the right things every day, you're right, it is infinite, and the possibilities are infinite. So it's a weird one, man. I think that, we were just in Chattanooga a few weeks ago, and you're right. As you were talking about that, I was thinking, what do I remember about that day, that weekend? It was all, and everything came down to like hanging out in the lobby with a bunch of awesome people. That's like my vision of that weekend. It isn't anything really to do with the race course or anything to do with the results of that. So these little incidents and these little community building exercises continue to happen, and relationships continue to build. And I think that's the essence really of what's going on in the sport. It should be, because you'll get these people that, I think the glamour, this like twisted glamour of kind of showing up on race day and nobody knowing what you've been doing, and I'm speaking from experience. It's sort of like this, I'll show you, It's like, It's such a weight to carry, man. Like, I'm going to always show you what I got, and and then you finish, and, I know a lot of people like this too, that they go out and they do have a really good race, and you never saw them before the race and you never see them after the race. They're just done, and it's like, oh, well, they crushed it. And then it's like, where are they? And they're gone for the next year. It's like, you wonder what that life's like. I always used to talk about, I don't know if this even relates, but like when I would go out to the bars or whatever, and you'd always see these people that you'd always see out there, and they always seemed like such a great life, but you only saw them for like 3 hours of the day. And the other 21 hours were probably miserable. And, it seemed like they had their shit together all the time and they were really on top of it, but you don't really know what's going on.
Well, that still applies, because that's still the world we live in. People post a picture or a filtered, image on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, whatever, that they probably took 78 minutes just staging, and then that's supposed to replicate and project who they are and how their life is going. And it's just like total 100% horseshit.
It's amazing to me, man. People travel around the world and take pictures in front of Chernobyl.
That's what I gotta have this in my life, and I gotta do this. I'm like, there's None of it. And I even think, like, to an extent, like, the obsessive nature we've all created of picture taking is the most worthless time suck ever. Are you taking, like,
looking at pictures might be worse.
No, not even looking at pictures, but the things that you miss by trying to take a picture are things you're never going to get back. You're worried about taking the perfect picture of something with your family or your friends or your children or in nature. You're so worried about how it's going to look on your phone and how it's going to be projected on Instagram that you miss the minutes that you could have just sat there and soaked it in with your memory and never forgot it.
Mm-hmm. But they do that, man. Like, those apps are created to kind of instill that in us, and so it's a weird thing. Like, I don't think that's necessarily human nature, but they're playing on insecurities or something like that, you know. And I agree with you. It's just a weird thing to think about, why we have this need to put a post up and then, like, always go back and check it and see if we're getting validated for it.
That's human nature, man. That's insecurity, and then I want to know what I just did people liked, so I can feel pretty good about it while I sit alone on the toilet pretending like I'm taking a dump.
Mm-hmm. Well, I heard a thing the other day about how, like, Facebook really never started becoming what it is today until they inserted the like button, and how...
Oh, for sure.
It was like, it didn't start that way, evidently. I don't remember back to when it was, but it seems like the like button's always been there. But then when they were like, hey, wait, they went to, like, casinos, and how do you keep people at slot machines? You give them periodic doses of, attention and success. And so you post something, and then the like thing, and then you go back and then you're always kind of refreshing, sort of
Mm-hmm.
like you're always pulling the lever. And so they built that in there, which I thought was really kind of crazy, man.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, and that's like Instagram or Twitter, how you can kind of pull down with your thumb and it refreshes the feed. That's sort of, they simulated that after the lever of a slot machine. It's like you're pulling it down. You just can't get away because new stuff's always coming. New rewards. And
interesting.
Yeah, so they've basically designed it in a way that it sort of keeps us engaged like that. And it's kind of weird, but, like, you know, it is.
Well, but that's how triathletes approach most seasons. Like, how many times can I pull the lever?
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't, if I do this race and I really want to succeed, then I got to keep pulling it again because I got to at least get that. I'm more concerned about telling you about what I really want to accomplish than I am about taking the time to do it. But what's going to make me feel good is if I can pull this race lever 7, 8, 9, 13, 14 times a year. And but when the fact is, maybe the best thing for me is to pull it 2 or 3 times a year and prepare myself to really, really do well next year or take some time, then you don't want to do that because then you're missing it. And that's the thing is, like, when you're missing that, that's not an adrenaline rush, but you miss that, like, race rush, that being in, like, because I mean that's what most triathletes do. Is like a lot of them, not most, a lot of them fluctuate between race identities. Who are you right now? I am #Ironman Wisconsin. Who are you after that? I am #Ironman Florida. Who am I? And everything is that. Everything is the race. It's not. You rarely would see somebody like do a # like preparing for 2021. You know, to have like the race of my life or to be the best I can be. It's always about the next race. It's always that. It's, you know, everyone's profile picture. We know what life they're living when everybody changes their profile picture back to 2 things. And it's either in training for a race or it's their BIP number. It's never, hey, this is how I want to progress over the next 18 to 24 months so I can accomplish to be truly the best I can be, because I'm not really comfortable settling for being okay and just continuing to pull the lever. I just want to wait. And I want to get out the freaking sledgehammer and just mash it in about, 16 to 24 months. And I'm not telling you that because it's easy. I'm telling you that because it's hard. It's hard. And I also don't have a quick fix for you for it either. It's it's so weird because I just got a text from Elise Gallegos, who's a longtime listener and longtime friend of ours, who's was on the podium in Kona, who's won Ironman Florida, and she just sent me a text, and I haven't read it yet, but it's an article in the the phrase and the topic is consistency, period.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's like when you talk to people who have been the most successful, and you talk to the people who have reached, are getting close to doing what they really want to do or really want to accomplish, they would tell you it's about consistency. It's about more, and it's about keep doing it and not stopping, and doing the things that are right for you when they're right for you and your development, not what I want to do just because I feel like it, or because I'm really obsessed with more of the optics of it than I am the substance. Because that's also a prevalent theme and approach in our society is I am much more worried about the optics than I am what it's really made of and the substance of it and the why. I'd rather put off this optic of this and this versus I think I'm just going to lay low and do the stuff that's required. And I probably should make like a really great like bullet like PDF or image or that shows like, here are the characteristics I know from coaching as long as I have that have produced the best results, and here are the ones that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And they're boring. None of it's like none of the most successful athletes that I coach that have accomplished things they want to do. They've been to Kona. They've won races. They've done it, or they're trying to get there. Like you would be bored stiff listening to them explain their training or what they do. And I know it's like the worst sell ever as a coach, but they just, because that's the fact that they know that the answer is 98% of my year is going to be really, really boring. Hopefully. Listen, dude, the more boring year, the better. Because it means you didn't get hurt, it means you didn't get sick, it means, everything has been uneventful. But that 2% part of the year, the one that you focused on all year long that means the most to you, that you absolutely just smack out of the ballpark and you continue to see improvements, that's what makes it worthwhile. But so many of us are worried about making the other 98% about, making that the optic. Then the 2% of application is when you go to races. It's so reversed. It's we want to promote our training. We don't want to actually, have it accumulate and manifest itself in a positive, outstanding breakthrough performance at a race, because it's easy. It's so much easier to register for an Ironman than it is to work for one. It's super easy. And the easiest thing you're going to do is spend $800. The hardest thing after that is all the work that's required. Staying healthy, staying motivated, staying committed. It's that long-term vision. But the most excited, and this is the 100% truth. I've done it. You've done it. I think most people have that signed up for a 70.3 or a full Ironman. The most excited you've ever been for that race is at the finish line and the day you hit register and spent $800. Everything else in between is just for show. And most people make that their, it's like a real mediocre movie going on, a sneak peek or, release tour for like 3 years. And and they only show you like the same 30-second grab from it every time for 3 years. And the movie comes out and it's only 60 seconds long. And it's terrible. But it's easier to market the 98% of training and make that your own advertisement than it is an advertisement of training for what you really want to accomplish long term.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not nearly as sexy. But it's something that you've got to think about. And it's something that if you really want to succeed and you really want, and you have to be okay telling athletes that you're probably a year or two years away. And as a coach, you hopefully you should be honest enough with your athlete to say that hey, is because athletes will ask all the time, I really want to do this or I want to qualify for this. How far away do you think I am? You have to be honest. I don't know, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and that's if you can put it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it shouldn't be, but I'm sure it's scary for some coaches because they think, I want to find somebody who can tell me I can do it in 6 months.
Yeah.
Because that's the easy answer. That's the most exciting answer.
It's so hard, man. I always try to think about ways to kind of help people do that and help myself do that, because we are on such a, and I always talk about the electronics and digital and social media and how that, I feel like it really puts us in a habit of seeking highs and things like that. And then that's sort of how we translate our training too when we can, is like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. So like, all the way back to last year when I was joking around or having fun with my 10:17 run, I somehow spun this concept of running slow into a challenge, and it was really exciting for me. So it's almost like, we always want to think about working out in terms of crushing today's workout or really having a great day or like really improving, in black and white today or whatever. But like with all the stuff we got going on, the distractions and the highs of normal everyday life and trying to be great all the time, it's almost like we could look at our workouts as a balancing effect. And it's like a challenge to go out and just kind of just be under control and just do it kind of in a boring way, just to sort of balance the rest of life. Because it's almost like then it becomes exciting, or quote unquote exciting, I guess. It's sort of like if there's a purpose behind the idea that I'm not going to go out and run my ass off today. I'm just going to go out and take it easy. And it kind of helps level things off. It's a different thing. It's not like, this isn't exciting, is rather, because is everything else that I want to be doing. So it's just I guess I'm talking about changing mindset. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for kind of hanging around, because, when we talk about 5-year goals and keeping this podcast going and all that sort of stuff, it's important to us that we can talk like this. This isn't like like you said, always a 10 hacks to getting better at triathlon or whatever. But this is important to us to explore these sort of things. And if we can, continue to find that enjoyment, that satisfaction in the podcast and the way that we go about it, the odds of it going on, it's a metaphor for training, really. I always think of it like that. It's like, we don't try to solve the world's problems overnight. We just kind of discuss where we're at and be consistent with it. And the good news is that maybe 5 years from now, this thing will be really good.
I think we're really good right now. We're really good I told you this on Friday, and is our podcast like a traditional, predictable podcast? No. Is it going to be triathlon 24/7? No. Is it going to be about interviews with pro athletes and Garmin 935 reviews? No. Is it going to be 88 minutes of sponsorship ads about, avocado mattresses and shave clubs? No. But for the most part, and we've heard this, and we've gotten this via email and Facebook posts and iTunes reviews, is that we're going to say a lot of things that might be harsh, and they might be totally brutally honest, and they're really going to probably piss you off if you really just don't want to hear them.
Right.
Because you're not ready to hear them. And that's just, you're not ready. I mean, that, like, the guy who very much changed my life when I went into treatment, Jeff Browning, who I've been grateful enough to also see as a therapist ever since then. I absolutely hated his guts when I was in treatment. He was my therapist, and I hated him because he said all the things that I knew were true that I wasn't ready to hear. And I just could not stand him. But it wasn't I couldn't stand him. And I don't think people have, hopefully, that like vitriol and hate for our podcast. We've gotten a few bad reviews, but it's that I just wasn't ready to hear what he had to say. I knew it was true. I just didn't want to accept it. And then it was like, then I got to do all that work to change it. And then maybe if it is true, then what's wrong with me? But the fact is, there was a lot of things wrong with me, and that's not, there's not that many things with you, or our listeners that's wrong with you to that degree. But we're going to say things that hopefully that some people are ready to hear, and that hopefully the ones that are ready to hear it or like to hear it or get something from it, they're actually going to make long-lasting changes in their life that are positive both on and off the triathlon course. And that is what matters the most to us. And, we honestly, I would rather get 6,000 emails or Facebook messages or Facebook posts or iTunes reviews that had a positive review, like you helped me change the way that I train in a positive way and how I looked at my life and how I had balance and it changed me personally, then ever get one single email that was like, your 12 steps to a faster bike split really helped me crush 70.3 X. I want that for you, but that's like way down the bottom of hopefully like when we end up one day retiring this podcast, which will happen. We're not going to live forever. Is that the legacy that hopefully that we can leave is one of, positivity, connectivity, and those two things together hopefully have led you to, in some way a breakthrough performance in life. And if triathlon's a part of it, I would bet my money that that's impact on triathlon would be very symbiotic. But again, I totally agree with you. We appreciate people hanging on for as long as they have. Go back and listen to the first ones. I think it'd be also interesting to see, how the podcast and how the conversations and what we've delivered and how much more open we've become have, the trajectory the podcast has taken and how things have changed. And there's a lot of good info back in there from a lot of different people and a lot of different stories, a lot of different experiences. And sometimes we'll probably, uber repetitive and you hear them a lot. But, if you take away from, you were talking to me today, which is we get that a lot. I feel like you were talking to me today. Then good. Then at least you were we hopefully impacted someone positively. And that's all we can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you say things in different ways, the same kind of things, and hopefully some way clicks more than others, And it is true, man. It's like sometimes people just don't want to hear that. I've been through that. I don't want to hear a lot of stuff that I know I need to hear. I'm not ready for it. It's like the guy who has the pristine lawn, everything's perfectly manicured, and your backyard is a jungle. It's like that dude pisses you off,
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah, and you rip on him, and you rip on from being so particular, and and never do it, and you're again. Like,
there he goes,
there goes Larry the Long Guy, can't have an imperfect blade of grass, and
he's
you're
bought
like,
a new wheelbarrow. I mean,
and you're like, crap, I'm such a lazy piece of crap. Why don't you go fix your lawn?
Yeah,
it is all about our own. It's all about our own reality, but we'll have exciting stuff coming to you next Monday. Probably some great stories and more. Hopefully intuitive topics and things that we can outline and discuss that we learned from camp. We learned something new every camp because we have so many different athletes and people come in. It's such a good time. I'll be coming to you from Chattanooga. If your first time listening, again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being patient, and I hope you got something out of it. Please leave us a review. Let us know what you think. Those are always supportive in helping other people find our podcast and creating a more substantial and more people in our community. And that community resides not just in the podcast, but also on Facebook. You can search Crushing Iron Group on Facebook and be part of that conversation. We're almost about 2,000 members deep. And it is always good conversations, good wisdom, great experience, a very open forum with positivity. It's not 90% memes and Garmin screenshots like a lot of groups. So hop in there if you want to and be part of the discussion. And if you want to find out about the rest of the things we do and offer, you can go to crushingiron.com, and that'll give you all the info on coaching and training, our club, gear, swim analysis, other topics about the podcast, videos, you name it, it's on there. It's our one-stop shop. It's crushingiron.com.
Mm-hmm. Did you do our emails?
No. Mike is at crushingiron@gmail.com, and I am at c26coach@gmail.com.
Check it out. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will be back with you Monday after our camp.
Have a good weekend, people.
See you, buddy.